This video provides brief information about the artillery used by the Russian Army in combat during World War I.
The 76.2mm Divisional Gun M1902 was one of the most important field artillery weapons of the Russian Empire in the early 20th century. It served as the standard divisional field gun of the Imperial Russian Army and played a central role during the Russo-Japanese War, the First World War, and the Russian Civil War. The gun represented a major step forward in Russian artillery design, combining relatively light weight, reliability, and a high rate of fire. The M1902 was developed between 1898 and 1902 with technical assistance from the French firm Schneider, which at the time was one of the leading artillery manufacturers in Europe. The main objective of the project was to replace older, slow-firing field guns with a modern, quick-firing weapon capable of supporting infantry in mobile warfare. The gun was officially adopted by the Russian Army in 1902 and rapidly became the backbone of divisional artillery units. In terms of construction, the 76.2mm M1902 followed the classic field gun layout of its era. It featured a steel barrel of approximately 30 calibers in length, around 2.3 meters, and used a screw breech mechanism, which allowed safe and efficient loading. One of its most important technical features was the hydro-spring recoil system, which absorbed the recoil energy when firing and automatically returned the barrel to its original position. This system allowed the gun to remain in place after each shot, significantly increasing its rate of fire compared to older artillery pieces. The gun was mounted on a single-axle carriage with wooden spoked wheels designed for horse-drawn transport. The carriage was simple but robust, making the weapon well-suited for rough field conditions. The elevation range was approximately -5 degrees to +17 degrees, while horizontal traverse was limited to about 5 to 6 degrees, which was typical for field guns of that period. Although these angles were somewhat restrictive, they were considered acceptable at the time and compensated for by repositioning the gun when necessary. The M1902 fired 76.2mm ammunition, primarily high explosive and shrapnel shells. Shrapnel rounds were especially effective against infantry in open terrain, making the gun a powerful anti-personnel weapon. The average shell weight was about 6.2 to 6.5 kilograms, and the muzzle velocity reached approximately 588 meters per second. The maximum firing range was around 8.5 kilometers, while a well-trained crew could achieve a practical rate of fire of 10 to 12 rounds per minute. A typical gun crew consisted of 6 to 8 soldiers, including a commander, gunner, loader, and several assistants. The combat weight of the gun was roughly 1,040 to 1,100 kilograms, which gave it good mobility for a divisional field piece of its time. This balance between firepower and mobility allowed the M1902 to be effectively used in both offensive and defensive operations. During the First World War, the 76.2mm Divisional Gun M1902 became the most widespread artillery piece in Russian service. It was employed in infantry support, counter-battery fire, and the destruction of field fortifications. As the war progressed, certain limitations became evident, particularly the relatively narrow firing angles and the increasing need for more powerful high-explosive shells. Nevertheless, the gun proved to be highly reliable and effective under combat conditions. In conclusion, the 76.2mm Divisional Gun M1902 was a landmark weapon in the history of Russian and later Soviet artillery. Its quick firing capability, solid engineering, and battlefield effectiveness made it one of the most successful field guns of the early 20th century. The experience gained from its service strongly influenced the development of later Russian artillery systems, ensuring its lasting significance in military history.
The 76mm Mountain Gun Model 1909 was a light artillery piece specifically designed for use in mountainous and difficult terrain, where conventional field artillery could not operate effectively. It was adopted by the Russian Empire in 1909 and officially designated as the 76mm Mountain Gun Model of 1909. The gun was based on the earlier Schneider-Danglis mountain gun, originally developed by the French company Schneider & Company in cooperation with Greek artillery officer Colonel Panagiotis Danglis. To meet Russian military requirements, the original design was modified to use the standard Russian 76.2mm caliber, ensuring ammunition compatibility with other Russian artillery systems of the period. The primary purpose of the 76mm Mountain Gun Model 1909 was to provide direct and indirect fire support for infantry units operating in mountainous regions. Its defining feature was its ability to be dismantled into several loads, allowing it to be transported by pack animals such as mules. This made the gun highly mobile in areas with narrow mountain paths, steep slopes, and limited road infrastructure. When disassembled, the gun could be broken down into approximately 7 transport loads, enabling rapid movement and deployment even in extremely challenging terrain. In terms of construction, the gun featured a steel barrel mounted on a lightweight carriage with wooden spoked wheels reinforced by metal rims. It used a hydro-pneumatic recoil system, which absorbed recoil energy efficiently and allowed for relatively rapid and accurate fire. The breech mechanism was a quick-firing interrupted screw breech, allowing fast loading and improved firing rates compared to older artillery designs. The gun fired fixed ammunition, combining the projectile and propellant charge into a single unit, which further simplified handling under combat conditions. The barrel length of the Model 1909 was approximately 1.25 meters, corresponding to a length of about 16.5 calibers. The gun could elevate from approximately -6 degrees to +28 degrees, enabling both direct and indirect fire against visible targets and indirect fire over terrain obstacles. Horizontal traverse was limited, typical for mountain artillery, but sufficient for its intended role. The gun was capable of firing 8 to 10 rounds per minute, depending on crew training and battlefield conditions. Ballistically, the 76mm Mountain Gun Model 1909 fired high explosive and shrapnel shells weighing approximately 6.2 to 6.5 kilograms. The muzzle velocity ranged between 350 and 390 meters per second, providing a maximum effective firing range of roughly 8,000 to 8,600 meters. These characteristics made the gun effective against enemy infantry formations, light fortifications, and field positions, particularly in terrain where heavier artillery could not be deployed. The gun was typically operated by a crew of 5 to 6 soldiers, responsible for aiming, loading, firing, and maintaining the weapon, as well as managing ammunition supply. Despite its relatively light weight, the gun proved durable and reliable in harsh environmental conditions, including extreme cold and rough terrain. The 76mm Mountain Gun Model 1909 saw extensive service during World War I, where it was used by Russian forces on fronts that included mountainous and forested regions. It continued to be employed during the Russian Civil War and remained in service with the Red Army into the early years of World War II, particularly in secondary roles or in difficult terrain. Several guns were also captured and reused by enemy forces. The German Army, for example, redesignated captured pieces as 7.62 cm Gebirgskanonen 293. In conclusion, the 76mm Mountain Gun Model 1909 represents an important step in the development of specialized mountain artillery. Its combination of mobility, firepower, and adaptability made it one of the most effective mountain guns of the early 20th century. Designed for terrain where traditional artillery was impractical, it played a significant role in multiple conflicts and demonstrated the strategic value of lightweight, transportable artillery systems in modern warfare.
The 107mm gun Model 1910 was a heavy field artillery piece developed for the Imperial Russian Army in the years immediately preceding the First World War. Designed with the technical assistance of the French firm Schneider, this gun was intended to provide long-range, accurate firepower capable of engaging enemy artillery batteries, fortified positions, command centers, and key logistical targets deep behind the front lines. At the time of its introduction, it represented one of the most powerful and modern long-range field guns in Russian service. The gun featured a long steel barrel, approximately 4.5 meters in length, which gave it a high muzzle velocity and excellent ballistic performance. It was equipped with a modern hydro-pneumatic recoil system that absorbed the recoil energy after firing and automatically returned the barrel to its firing position. This system significantly improved firing accuracy and allowed the crew to maintain a steady rate of fire. The carriage was a conventional two-wheel box trail design typical of heavy field artillery of the era, optimized for stability rather than rapid movement. The 107mm gun model 1910 used separate loading ammunition, meaning that the projectile and the propellant charge were loaded separately. This allowed the gun crew to vary the propellant charge according to the required range. The primary ammunition type was a high-explosive fragmentation shell, effective against enemy infantry formations, artillery positions, and lightly fortified structures. The projectile weighed approximately 18 to 19 kilograms, delivering substantial explosive power upon impact. In terms of performance, the gun had a maximum firing range of approximately 12 to 13 kilometers, which was an impressive figure for a field gun of its time. The muzzle velocity was about 670 meters per second, enabling flat trajectories and accurate long-range fire. Due to the weight of the shells and the separate loading system, the rate of fire was relatively low, typically 2 to 3 rounds per minute when operated by a well-trained crew. The total combat weight of the 107mm gun model 1910 was roughly 2.1 to 2.3 tons. It was normally transported by horse teams, which limited its mobility compared to lighter field guns. As a result, it was most often employed from prepared or semi-permanent firing positions. The elevation range extended from approximately -5 degrees to +37 degrees, while horizontal traverse was limited, requiring careful placement of the gun before engagement. During the First World War, the 107mm gun model 1910 served extensively in Russian heavy artillery units. It proved particularly valuable in counter-battery fire, long-range bombardment, and the destruction of enemy defensive positions. Following the collapse of the Russian Empire, many of these guns were inherited by Soviet forces and saw further service during the Russian Civil War. Some examples were later modernized or remained in secondary roles for several years afterward. In conclusion, the 107mm gun model 1910 was a technically advanced and highly effective heavy field gun for its era. Its long range, high accuracy, and powerful ammunition made it a key component of Russian artillery during the First World War, and it occupies an important place in the historical development of modern field artillery.
The 122mm howitzer M1909 was a medium field howitzer developed for the Imperial Russian Army in the early 20th century and became one of the most important Russian artillery pieces of its era. It was designed in 1909 by the German firm Krupp at a time when Russia was modernizing its artillery following the lessons learned during the Russo-Japanese War of 1905 to 1905. The weapon was adopted to provide effective indirect fire support, especially against entrenched infantry positions, fortifications, and field obstacles where high-angle fire was essential. The howitzer had a caliber of 122mm and was mounted on a single trail carriage with wooden wheels suitable for horse traction. Its barrel length was relatively short, approximately L14, which was typical for howitzers intended to fire shells at steep trajectories. The weapon used separate loading ammunition, meaning that the projectile and propellant charge were loaded separately, allowing flexibility in range and firing power. The breech mechanism was of the interrupted screw type, which was reliable and robust for field conditions. In terms of performance, the 122mm howitzer M1909
fired a high explosive shell weighing approximately 22 to 23 kilograms. The muzzle velocity was about 335 meters per second, giving the weapon a maximum firing range of around 7,600 meters. While this range was modest by later standards, it was fully adequate for World War I-era battlefield requirements. The elevation range extended from approximately -1 degree to +43 degrees, enabling effective high-angle fire, while traverse was limited to about 4 degrees, requiring repositioning of the entire gun from major directional changes. The recoil system consisted of a hydro-spring recoil mechanism, which absorbed the firing shock and returned the barrel to its original position after each shot. This improved firing stability and reduced the need to re-aim after every round. However, the lack of a gun shield in early versions left the crew exposed to small arms fire and shell splinters, a common limitation of early field artillery designs. The 122mm howitzer M1909 saw extensive service during World War I, where it proved effective in trench warfare, particularly for bombardment of enemy positions and destruction of defensive works. After the Russian Revolution, the howitzer continued to serve in the Red Army during the Russian Civil War and remained in use for many years due to the lack of immediate replacements. Its solid construction and reliability ensured a long operational life despite its increasingly outdated design. In 1937, the Soviet Union modernized the weapon, resulting in the 122mm howitzer M1909-37. This upgrade included a longer chamber to allow more powerful propellant charges, reinforced carriage components, improved sights, and compatibility with newer ammunition. Although the modernization improved range and performance, the basic limitations of the original design, such as limited traverse and mobility, remained. Despite being gradually replaced by more modern artillery pieces, the 122mm howitzer M1909 represents an important step in the evolution of Russian and Soviet artillery. It bridged the gap between 19th-century gun designs and more advanced 20th-century howitzers, contributing significantly to artillery tactics and battlefield fire support during a critical period in military history.
The 122mm howitzer M1910 was a medium-caliber field artillery weapon developed for the Russian Imperial Army in the early 20th century and later widely used by the Soviet Red Army. It was designed by the French company Schneider based on Russian military requirements and officially adopted into service in 1910. The howitzer was created to provide effective indirect fire support, capable of engaging enemy troops, artillery positions, trenches, and fortified fieldworks with high explosive fire delivered on a steep, plunging trajectory. The primary tactical role of the 122mm howitzer M1910 was the destruction of enemy infantry formations, field fortifications, and artillery batteries located behind cover or terrain obstacles. Its ability to fire from concealed positions made it especially valuable during the positional warfare conditions of the First World War. Throughout that conflict, it became one of the main medium howitzers of the Russian artillery and proved to be reliable and effective in combat. From a design perspective, the M1910 followed a conventional layout for its time. It featured a steel monoblock barrel with a length of approximately 12 calibers, which provided a good balance between range, projectile stability, and manageable recoil. The breech mechanism was a screw-type breech, ensuring secure sealing and relatively rapid loading. The recoil system consisted of a hydraulic recoil brake combined with a spring-based recuperator, significantly reducing recoil forces and allowing the gun to remain in position after firing, thus improving accuracy and rate of fire. The howitzer was mounted on a single-axle box trail carriage equipped with wooden wheels reinforced by steel rims. Later versions sometimes used rubber-rimmed wheels. During firing, a rear spade anchored the carriage firmly into the ground, ensuring stability. The gun was fitted with mechanical elevation and traverse mechanisms that allowed precise aiming in both the vertical and horizontal planes.
Its elevation range enabled high-angle fire, which was essential for engaging entrenched targets. The 122mm howitzer M1910 primarily fired high-explosive fragmentation shells, which were highly effective against infantry, earthworks, and light fortifications. Shrapnel shells were also available and were used mainly against troops in the open. Ammunition was of the separate loading type, meaning the projectile and propellant charge were loaded separately. This system allowed gunners to adjust the firing range by selecting different propellant charges according to tactical needs. In terms of technical characteristics, the howitzer had a caliber of 122mm and a combat weight of approximately 1,300 to 1,350 kilograms. The weight of the projectile ranged from about 21 to 23 kilograms, depending on the type. The muzzle velocity was approximately 330 meters per second, and the maximum firing range reached around 7,700 to 8,000 meters. The maximum elevation angle was about plus 45 degrees, providing effective high-angle fire. The practical rate of fire was around 2 to 3 rounds per minute, and the gun crew typically consisted of 6 to 8 personnel. Historically, the 122mm howitzer M1910 played a significant role in the development of Russian and Soviet artillery doctrine. It saw extensive service not only during the First World War, but also during the Russian Civil War. Modernized versions, most notably the M1910-30, continued to serve into the early stages of the Second World War. Thanks to its robust construction, reliability, and effective firepower, the 122mm howitzer M1910 is regarded as one of the most successful medium-field howitzers of its era and remains an important milestone in the history of artillery development.
The 152mm howitzer Model 1910 was a heavy field artillery piece developed in the early 20th century for the Imperial Russian Army. It was designed by the French company Schneider EC, one of the leading artillery manufacturers of the period, and entered service shortly before the First World War. The howitzer was intended to provide powerful, high-angle fire against enemy trenches, field fortifications, artillery positions, and troop concentrations, reflecting the growing importance of indirect fire in modern warfare. At the time of its introduction, the Model 1910 was considered a modern and effective weapon, combining solid construction with reliable firing mechanisms. The howitzer had a caliber of 152.4 millimeters and a relatively short barrel with a length of approximately L12, which was typical for howitzers designed for high-trajectory fire. In combat position, the weapon weighed around 2,200 to 2,300 kilograms. It used separate loading ammunition, consisting of a projectile and a variable propellant charge, allowing flexibility in firing range. The primary ammunition type was the high-explosive shell, weighing about 40 to 41 kilograms, which was highly effective against earthworks, bunkers, and infantry in cover. The muzzle velocity was moderate, but the shell's steep descent angle ensured significant destructive effect upon impact. The maximum firing range of the original Model 1910 was approximately 8 to 9 kilometers, which was adequate for the requirements of World War I battlefield conditions. The elevation range extended from about -5 degrees to plus 40 to 43 degrees, enabling effective indirect fire. Horizontal traverse was limited, roughly 6 degrees, meaning that the howitzer usually had to be repositioned to engage targets outside this narrow arc. The recoil system consisted of a hydraulic recoil brake and recuperator, which improved stability and firing accuracy and allowed the gun to remain in position after each shot. The breech mechanism was an interrupted screw breech, providing reliable sealing and safe operation. The gun crew typically consisted of 7 to 8 soldiers, responsible for aiming, loading, firing, and maintaining the weapon. Although not highly mobile by later standards, the howitzer was transported using horse teams and could be deployed in prepared firing positions with reasonable efficiency. Its robust design and dependable performance made it a valued asset on the Eastern Front during the First World War. After the Russian Revolution, the howitzer remained in service with the Red Army, demonstrating its durability and continued tactical relevance. In the 1930s, the weapon was modernized and redesignated as the 152mm howitzer Model 1910-30. This upgraded version featured a longer barrel and improved ballistic performance, increasing the maximum range to approximately 12 to 13 kilometers. These improvements significantly extended the service life of the system, allowing it to remain operational into the early years of the Second World War. Overall, the 152mm howitzer Model 1910 represents a classic example of early 20th century heavy field artillery, notable for its firepower, reliability, and important role in the evolution of modern indirect fire artillery doctrine.
The 305mm howitzer Model 1915 was a Russian heavy howitzer developed and produced during the First World War. Originally designed for naval and coastal defense use, this powerful siege artillery piece was later adopted by the Russian Army to provide long-range, heavy bombardment capability against fortified positions. Its creation was driven by the need for larger and more destructive artillery capable of reducing enemy fortifications and entrenched defenses, which were widespread on the Eastern Front during World War I. The howitzer was manufactured by the Obukhov State Plant in St. Petersburg, one of the main artillery factories of the Russian Empire. The initial order was placed in August 1915 for 8 units, each costing 271,500 rubles after successful trials of the naval version of the weapon. Subsequent orders increased production, and by late 1917, approximately 42 howitzers had been delivered to the Army. The 305mm howitzer M1915 was extremely heavy, with a combat weight of around 63.9 tons, making it one of the largest artillery pieces of its time. Its caliber was 305mm or 12 inches, reflecting its designation and indicating the large diameter of its barrel. The howitzer fired a heavy projectile weighing approximately 377 kilograms, capable of inflicting devastating damage upon impact. Its muzzle velocity, the speed at which the shell left the barrel, was about 442 meters per second. Due to the massive size and weight of its ammunition, the howitzer had a low rate of fire, averaging approximately 0.3 rounds per minute, which means only about 1 round every 3 minutes could be fired in sustained operations. In terms of range, the howitzer could reach targets at distances up to 8.36 miles, making it effective for long-distance siege bombardment. Its elevation range reached up to 58 degrees, and it had a horizontal traverse of 60 degrees, allowing significant flexibility in targeting without repositioning the entire gun platform. Given its enormous weight and size, the M1915 howitzer required specialized transportation. It was typically transported in pieces by railway and assembled near the firing position. This limited its tactical mobility, but ensured that such a heavy weapon could be brought to bear where required. The weapon's design reflected the strategic requirements of the time to defeat enemy fortifications, bunkers, and defensive works that were otherwise difficult to neutralize with lighter artillery. During World War I, the howitzers were deployed on the Eastern Front, where they supported major offensives and besieged fortified positions. After the 1917 Russian Revolution and the formation of the Soviet Union, many of these howitzers remained in the Red Army inventory. They continued to serve during the Second World War, used by Soviet forces against Axis-fortified defenses and in major offensives. Some units were reportedly used in battles such as the Siege of Königsberg and on the Karelian Isthmus against Finnish fortifications. In summary, the 305mm howitzer Model 1915 stands out in artillery history as a heavy siege gun that combined enormous destructive power with significant logistical challenges.
Its role in both world wars highlights its strategic importance for the Russian Empire and later the Soviet Union, providing essential heavy artillery support against some of the most fortified and resilient enemy positions of the early 20th century.
The Mortier de 58mm Type II was a French light trench mortar developed and widely used during World War I, designed to provide infantry units with mobile, short-range, indirect fire support. It was a refinement of the earlier Mortier de 58mm Type I, with improvements aimed at increasing stability, accuracy, and ease of handling in trench warfare conditions. Its design reflected the French military's recognition of the need for a light, portable mortar capable of lobbing explosive shells into enemy trenches and fortifications where traditional artillery could not reach effectively. The Type II mortar featured a relatively simple and robust construction, consisting of a smoothbore steel barrel mounted on a tripod base that allowed for both elevation and traverse adjustments. The barrel was relatively short, which limited the range, but made it easy to transport and set up quickly in forward positions. The mortar fired fin-stabilized explosive bombs weighing approximately 3 kilograms, with an effective range of around 200 to 500 meters, depending on the charge used. This range allowed infantry units to engage targets behind cover or in trenches without exposing themselves to direct enemy fire. The mortar's firing mechanism relied on a percussion system. The bomb was dropped down the barrel, striking a fixed firing pin at the base, which ignited the propellant charge, launching the projectile in a high arcing trajectory. In terms of performance, the Mortier de 58mm Type II was appreciated for its portability and ease of use. A crew of 2 to 3 men could quickly move the weapon, set it up, and fire in rapid succession. Its rate of fire reached up to 20 rounds per minute in optimal conditions, though in practice it was often lower due to the need for careful aiming and loading. The shells were highly effective against enemy personnel, light fortifications, and barbed wire, providing crucial support during offensive operations and trench raids. The mortar's relatively light weight, approximately 60 to 65 kilograms in total, including the barrel and tripod, allowed it to be disassembled and transported by pack animals or carried short distances by infantry, making it a flexible weapon in the dynamic and constrained environment of trench warfare. The Mortier de 58mm Type II represented a significant improvement over earlier designs, incorporating adjustments to the baseplate and barrel attachment that reduced recoil and improved accuracy. It remained in service with French forces throughout World War I and influenced subsequent designs of light infantry mortars. Its combination of portability, simplicity, and effective explosive power made it a key component of French infantry tactics, providing a mobile solution for delivering indirect fire support directly to the front lines.